UFC 319 is one of those cards that we're going to remember from 2025 because it has one of the most hyped main events in quite some time. We have Dricus du Plessis against Khamzat Chimaev. But we've also got a few other big fights on the card. We have Aaron Pico, Bellator star, making his UFC debut against Lerone Murphy on short notice in the co-main event. We also have Gerald Cannonier versus Michael Venom Page, Carlos Prates versus Geoff Neal, and Tim Elliot versus Kai Asakura. Today, we're going to be breaking down every fight on the card, starting with the early prelims, going all the way up to the main event. I'll give you the context, style matchups, and my official breakdown and prediction for each fight, including a couple of upset picks that I think could blow up people's parlays and the betting lines. So this isn't just about who I think wins. This is also about why and how. I'm Wyatt, and this is Fight Society. We will start with the early prelim opener of Alibi Idiris versus Joseph Bopo Morales. Now, this is an interesting matchup because you have an undefeated Idiris going up against Joseph Morales, who's returning to the UFC after being cut. Now, he was in the UFC at 125, where he lost a TKO to Davison Figueiredo, who went on to become champion. And he also lost a split decision to Eric Shelton. Now, while he actually does have UFC experience, I look at Alibi Idiris and he's undefeated. And when you look through his record, he's actually fought quite a bit of regional talent that has good records. He has finishes over guys that are 8-3, 10-1, 7-1, 7-2, things like that. He has wins over very good competition. And while Joseph Morales is back in the UFC and he has UFC experience, I just think that this is a setup for a very, very good Kazakhstani prospect, a guy from that region of the world that they like to appeal to these days, to get a win in the UFC. I mean, this guy could be a serious problem in the UFC flyweight division. Given that it's a flyweight fight, neither of these guys have a ton of knockout power. I'm going to go with Idiris Alibi by decision. 30-27, 29-28. Maybe he has a little bit of trouble in the first round, but I'm going with Idiris to win this fight by decision. Moving up the card from there, we have Karine Silva going up against Dione Barboza. Now that I'm looking at it, I kind of think this Dione Barboza is the girl that was kissing all awkward on Michael Chandler on Tough when he did that season with Connor. If you guys remember that one weird clip. Here we have ranked Karine Silva. She did just lose her last fight, but she was on a 4-fight win streak before that. She was actually prepared for this card. She was supposed to be fighting JJ Aldrich on this card. And Barbosa has heavy hands, but this is a short notice fight. I'm going to go with Karine Silva to win by decision. She is a submission threat. Barbosa has some heavy hands, but the short notice for Barbosa and the fact that they haven't had a whole lot of time to prepare for each other and the fact that this is a women's MMA fight, they do tend to go to decision very often. I'm going to go with the fighter that was actually booked to be on this card in the first place, Karine Silva, by decision. Moving on from there, we are going to move on to a very, very intriguing fight in the middleweight division, which is Nursulton Ruziboev against Bryan Battle. Bryan Battle is one of my favorite up-and-coming fighters. His hype did take quite a big hit when he missed weight by 5 pounds and then won a split decision against Randy Brown. But just before that, when he beat Kevin Jousset in France, y'all thought the Butcher was going to lose to a French dude. That was one of the sickest promos that we've seen cut in a while. But Nursulton Ruziboev has a ton of experience. He's a KO threat. And Battle, you know, he's like that durable grinder type that can grind out wrestling up against the fence. He can stick through very hard exchanges. And when I look at the height and reach advantage for Ruziboev, when I look at the vast experience difference between the two and the fact that they were both at welterweight, so this weight cut is not a problem for either of them. Bryan Battle did miss weight though, so it's a little bit of a discipline. I'm going to go out on a limb here because I should pick Nursulton Ruziboev, but I'm going to pick with my heart, not my gut here, and I'm going to go with Bryan Battle grinding out a very lackluster decision performance where Ruziboev maybe pieces him up a little bit in the first round. Bryan Battle decides to get in there with some clinch wrestling and try to take the fight there. Fight inside with knees and elbows. I am going to take Bryan Battle by 29-28 decision. So yeah, so far I have 3 decisions for the first 3 fights. I'm going to go with Ruziboev getting the first round and then Bryan Battle picking it up from there. Moving up the card from there, we have 2 very long established UFC veterans. Drakkar Klose has got like 12 UFC fights. Edson Barbosa's got 30, I believe. Edson Barboza has lost 3 of his last 4. As you can see right here, he lost to Lerone Murphy. He beat Sadiq Youssef and Billy Quarantillo, but he lost to Bryce Mitchell and Giga Chikadze. Whereas Drakkar Klose has beaten Brandon Jenkins, Rafa Garcia, Joe Selecki, Joaquim Silva, and then he lost to Joel Alvarez. That was a good fight, though. When I look at this fight, it feels like Drakkar Klose is a vastly younger guy because he hasn't been around as long as Edson Barboza. But Edson Barboza is only 2 years older than Drakkar Klose. We have 39 years old versus 37 years old. And when I look at this fight, I'm going to take the high-level experience and the experience in general. Way more fights in the UFC for Edson Barboza and way more against higher level competition. I am going to take Edson Barboza. I think he's going to stay on the outside. Drakkar Klose is going to want to wrestle up against the fence, dirty box up against the fence, and I think Edson Barboza is going to be able to maintain range with the kicks. So I am going to go with Edson Barboza. Lost 3 of his last 4. By all indicators, looks like he's on the way out of the promotion. I think Edson Barboza by decision 29-28, where he has 1 round where he ends up on bottom for a couple minutes and loses the round. Now, moving up the card from there, we have very exciting matchup at 155 pounds. We have Alexander Hernandez against Chase Hooper, who has moved up from 155 pounds recently. By their rankings, he's the number 20 UFC lightweight, so a win here could get him a ranked opponent. Yeah, he was the youngest fighter in the promotion's history until Raul Rosas came around. Now, Chase Hooper, 5-fight win streak. When you look at it, Nick Fiore, Jordan Levitt, Vyacheslav Borchev, Clay Guida, Jim Miller, whereas, you know, Alex Hernandez fights journeyman, not Jim Miller. Jim Miller is a legend, but he fights journeyman. You know, Bill Algeo, Damon Jackson, he lost both of those. Austin Hubbard, Kurt Hollabaugh. These are really not impressive wins compared to a 5-fight win streak constantly getting better like Chase Hooper, especially with the grappling advantage and the reach advantage. I know that Alexander Hernandez has that explosive punching power. I really don't think that it's going to be enough to overcome the long reach and range and especially the grappling advantage for Chase Hooper. I mean, Alexander Hernandez is one of those guys that just finds a way to lose fights. And that's why I think he may have a couple of moments that are exciting where he lands a big punch on Chase Hooper. But I'm going to take Chase Hooper by 2nd round sub or TKO. I think it's going to be similar to the Vyacheslav Borchev fight where he controls the fight on the ground and you're kind of just waiting for it to be over. And I think that's what's going to happen. He's going to dominate the first, maybe get clipped on the way in once. But aside from that, it's going to be absolute domination from Chase Hooper, and he's going to get a sub or a ground and pound TKO in round 2. So moving up the card from there, we have Jessica Andrade against Lupita Godinez. Now, Jessica Andrade has been a champion. She has fought at a high level in 2 different weight classes. She's powerful. She puts a lot of pressure on. She makes a lot of mistakes and leaves herself out in the open quite a bit. But Lupita Godinez, while she does have good positional control, good wrestling, and we have seen her put on very good performances, even in losses against Mackenzie Dern, Verna Jandiroba. Those were good fights. I just don't think that she's going to have the punching power or the physicality to overcome Jessica Andrade. So I sit here and I look at that fight, and obviously even just look at the picture of them two, you can tell who the manlier fighter is. And that's why I think it's going to be Jessica Andrade by decision. I think that this is way too big of a step up for Lupita Godinez because she lost to Jandiroba and she lost to Mackenzie Dern. Even though those were good for your record, those are pretty good losses because they're high ranked. She beat a pretty weak Julia Pilastri. And then from there, right back to an Andrade. So I think this is way too big of a step up for her at this time. So that's why I'm going to take Jessica Andrade by decision. I think she's going to drop her. I think she's going to overpower her. Maybe get a TKO late, but I'm expecting a 30-27, 29-28 decision. Potentially a lot of decisions on this card. We move on from there. We move up the card to GM3, the GOAT, Gerald Meerschaert against Michal Oleksiejczuk. Now, both of these guys have a very tough strength of schedule. When you look at GM3, both of these guys are 2-3 in their last 5, but GM3 lost to Andre Petrosky, not a terrible fight. Bryan Barberena win, Edmund Shabazian arm triangle win, Renner de Ritter sub, which ages very well, and then Brad Tavares by decision, also not a bad fight. Whereas Michal Oleksiejczuk, you see, beat Chidi Njokuani, lost to Michel Pereira, lost to Kevin Holland, lost to Shara Magomedov, and then beat Dricus du Plessis. I know they're both 2-3 in their last 5, and Michal Oleksiejczuk is younger and the favorite, and he's training with the Fighting Nerds now out of Brazil. But here's how this fight's going to go. Oleksiejczuk, with his good boxing and improved confidence from training with the Fighting Nerds, he's going to come out strong. He's going to crack GM3 early. GM3 is going to get hurt. He's going to have to pull guard and stall. But in typical GM3 comeback fashion, GM3 is going to get a sub from bottom, or he just survives the onslaught from Michal Oleksiejczuk, survives that early onslaught in the first 2-ish minutes. Then Michal Oleksiejczuk is going to gas out. Gerald Meerschaert is going to get top position and hunt that arm triangle, his signature submission. That's what's going to happen. First round, he gets cracked, he gets hurt, he almost gets finished, but then ends up finishing the fight in the first round with an arm triangle. So I have GM3 by sub. Moving up the card from there to the featured prelim, we have Bobby King Green against CDF Carlos Diego Ferreira. King Green has the slick boxing, head movement, all of that, but he's older, he's a step slower, and I feel like I have just watched him take too many very bad losses recently. Of course, he knocked out Grant Dawson, but then from there, the very, very late stoppage against Jalen Turner. Then he beat Jim Miller at UFC 300, who was older and slower. But since then, Paddy Pimblett choked him out, and Mauricio Huffy spinning back kick KO. A couple of nasty losses in a row. Whereas Grant Dawson by decision for CDF, he beat Matus Rebecki, he beat Michael Johnson. That ages really well. Matus Gamrot lost, Gregor Gillespie lost. He's not the most active. He's had 5 fights in 5 years, whereas Bobby Green's had 5 fights in less than 2 years. But it makes sense to me that CDF is the slight favorite because I just feel like I've seen Bobby Green get knocked out way too much recently. And I feel like he's going to be very timid, as much as he shouldn't be because his game plan is volume boxing and cardio. It really shouldn't be a patient, timid game plan. But Carlos Diego Ferreira has dangerous grappling, underrated striking, very underrated striking. He can really box some people up. And I think that we might see Bobby Green just lose a decision because he's just too timid to get involved in exchanges and possibly get knocked out again. I mean, his chin is just so deteriorated at this point. He's gotten knocked out a lot of times in his career. And I think at a certain point, the speed and the chin not being there anymore is going to shine through. And he's not just going to be losing to prospects like Huffy, Pimblett, Jalen Turner. He's going to be losing to people of his own age like CDF. So I'm going to take CDF by 30-27 decision, maybe 29-28. It's looking like a lot of decisions on these cards or on this card. It's going to be a fun card, but a lot of decisions. Now, moving up the card from there, we move to the main card opener of Tim Elliott versus Kai Asakura. Now, Tim Elliott just made a video about him yesterday about the entire Kevin Kroom situation. These two guys right here are going to give us a fun fight because you have explosive knockout power, massive for the weight class. Kai Asakura going up against very awkward, crafty vet in Tim Elliott. Now, I understand why Kai Asakura is the favorite. When you look at their recent fights, it's championship level fights in Ryzen with mostly wins and then a loss to Pantoja, whereas to him, lost to Matus Nicolau, beat Tagir Ulanbekov 3 years ago. He hasn't been that active. Beat Victor Altamirano, lost to Muhammad Makayev, beat Subhat Arji, but he hasn't fought in almost 2 years. And I know he's had all this personal stuff going on with the cheating scandal where his wife cheated on him with his teammate. But I just don't see this fight going very well for Tim Elliott, especially when you consider that it's been a year and a half out of the cage, almost 2 years. His last fight was at 135 pounds. Kai Asakura has only been out for about 8 months. Very big for the weight class, very explosive. I know he didn't really get to show it that much against Alexandre Pantoja, but I mean, it's Pantoja. Everybody gets smushed by Pantoja at this point in that division. I think that this is going to be Tim Elliott showing some veteran grit, that awkward style, the relentless scrambles, trying to get this fight to the ground. But I think that the size difference and physicality advantage for Asakura is going to make that very, very hard. And we're going to have the big for the weight class, very explosive counter striker in Kai Asakura get a fucking nasty KO. Could be round 1, probably round 2. If it gets into round 3, I'm a little bit worried for Kai Asakura because of his gas tank at this weight class. He's very big, has to cut a lot of weight. He looked terrible at his weigh-in against Pantoja. But if he keeps this fight from making it to the 3rd round where things get a little bit sticky for him from a cardio standpoint, I think we're going to see a nasty KO, probably with a knee while Tim Elliott shoots in on a takedown. But I think we're going to see a nasty KO from Kai Asakura. And all of a sudden, we're going to be talking about him against a top 10 guy. All of a sudden, flyweight may have a contender that could get a rematch with Pantoja in 1 or 2 more fights. But I think Kai Asakura is a very entertaining addition to the weight class, and I'm glad that he stuck around because he is very accomplished, champion in Ryzen, made millions of dollars on YouTube. He's a very popular Japanese YouTuber, and I'm surprised that when the Pantoja fight didn't go his way, that he stuck around, and I respect it, to be honest. So moving up the card from there, we have Jared Cannonier against Michael Venom Page. Michael Venom Page deciding to stick around at middleweight. Now, Jared Cannonier just beat Gregory Rodriguez about 5 months ago in an Apex main event. Before that, he lost to Nasruddin Imavov and Kyle Bohalio. And Michael Venom Page in the UFC has been win over Kevin Holland, lost to Ian Machado Gary, and then going up to middleweight and beating Sharaputin Magomedov. He's deciding to stick around. I know he's ranked at welterweight, but he said that there's no interesting fights for him there. He's sticking around at 185, and he's going up against the Killer Gorilla, and he is a minus 175 favorite. Both of these guys are kind of unks. You got 41-year-old Jared Cannonier and 38-year-old Michael Venom Page. Now, Cannonier, when he's on, heavy hands, relentless pressure, very tough guy to figure out, has some good grappling, good ground and pound, good defensive wrestling as well, which you won't really need against MVP. But MVP finds a way to just lull you into counters. I mean, he's flashy, elusive. He, of course, has all of the gamesmanship of drunk walking and chicken dancing and all of his kind of trash talk, or physical trash talk in some sort of ways, body language trash talk, I guess you could say, kind of lulls you into walking into counters because he's so elusive. He moves around so much, and you just end up walking into big counters, flying knees, head kicks, that very long 1-2 or jumping in right hand that Michael Venom Page throws from the orthodox stance. Jared Cannonier, he has a chin on him. He doesn't really get knocked out like that. I mean, even the Imavov stoppage was a very questionable stoppage. And Cannonier does have a tendency to chase and to follow. We saw that in the Izzy fight. We saw it in a few other fights. He gets frustrated and he approaches stalking in without really much of a game plan. He kind of just follows his opponent. And I think we're going to see Michael Venom Page win this fight backing up. And I think we're going to get a Michael Venom Page has a couple of fun moments, lands a big right hand that maybe hurts Cannonier a little bit. Cannonier tries to wrestle a little bit, maybe gets 1 round, but I think we're looking at a 30-27 decision, 29-28 decision for Michael Venom Page. And that would put him in the top 10 at middleweight and the top 15 at welterweight. So the world's kind of his oyster from there in terms of what fight he wants to take. Quick break. If you're loving this video and you want more from Fight Society, click that join button down below to become a channel member today, where you'll get access to members only live streams, behind the scenes vlogs, and all the unfiltered stuff that we don't post to the main channel. Back to the video. Moving up the card from there, we have Geoff Neal against Carlos Prates. This fight was supposed to be on UFC 314, Volkanovski versus Lopez. Then it got booked to be the main event of UFC Kansas City, and then Geoff Neal pulled out, and we got Ian Gary versus Carlos Prates, where Ian Gary won a decision that had some very slippery moments, some very tough moments for Ian Gary. Carlos Prates now knows that he has the gas tank to go 5 rounds, and he should have just pushed the gas a little bit more. Whereas Geoff Neal kind of just chased Ian Gary in their fight, and he lost the decision. I thought he could have won that fight. I thought it was something of a robbery win for Ian Gary, given that he didn't really do much. He was backing up, throwing jabs the whole time. But this fight, very, very different. Geoff Neal's got KO power in both hands, which kind of worries me for Carlos Prates. He could get clipped. He's tall, long, but he has his head up in the air, doesn't really get responsible on defense, but he throws volume. He keeps his range with the teeps and the jabs, and he's always very, very dangerous with that left hand and that knee to the body and the left kick from the backside when he's in southpaw. I think the size advantage that he has is going to play in here, and I think that Geoff Neal, just being older, a step behind, been out for a while, hasn't fought since 2024, and we're in August. Hasn't fought since he fought RDA in 2024, and that's a vastly different matchup than Carlos Prates. So I am going to take Carlos Prates by decision, but I could see him landing a big left hand that puts Geoff Neal down. But I am going to pick Carlos Prates to beat Geoff Neal. And then from there, you can start looking at the top 10 again if you're Carlos Prates. Maybe like a Joaquin Buckley, maybe a Bilal Muhammad. There's a lot of big fights there. I wouldn't want to see him fight Bilal Muhammad, but there's some big ones there. You know, Leon Edwards, that's a sick fight too. Carlos Prates, Leon Edwards. But that's who I have, is Carlos Prates by decision, possibly KO. We move up from there to the co-main event. We have Lerone Murphy going up against Aaron Pico, Bellator star, making the crossover, the third one this year, because we had a Patricio Pitbull and then Patchy Mix. Both of them had unsuccessful debuts. But here we have Lerone Murphy on short notice because Pico was supposed to fight Movsar Evloev at UFC Abu Dhabi on the Whitaker de Ritter card. Movsar pulled out. Apparently, Movsar is going to get a title shot for pulling out against Aaron Pico. But this could be a title eliminator in itself because Volkanovski needs challengers, and all that's about left is Movsar Evloev and these two guys right here, and Gene Silva if he gets past Diego Lopez. So there's only about three, because of course one of these guys has to lose. So there's really only about three defenses left for Volkanovski. I think he can win all of them. I think the biggest threat is Gene Silva, but we'll see how big of a threat he is after the Diego Lopez fight. Of course, Aaron Pico, very highly touted prospect. He was an all-state wrestler in California, I believe, in high school. Got signed to Bellator, I think as an amateur or with like one pro fight. They made him into a very big star for Bellator. Not saying he's a big star in general, but for Bellator. Fought once for PFL, got a win. But Lerone Murphy, undefeated in the UFC. Of course, he has a draw, but he's beaten Josh Emmett, Edson Barboza, Dan Ige, Josh Kulabau is a good win. It's a big step up to be in a pay-per-view co-main event, but it's Aaron Pico, so it's a Bellator guy, and it's almost an even fight. You see, we have -135 to +115. Almost an even fight. Pico fought at 155 in his last fight, so we'll see what that weight cut will do to him. But he is fighting in the UFC. This is his big chance. By all accounts, the UFC is very high on Aaron Pico. I really do want to go with Lerone Murphy because he just finds a way to win. He's fought higher level competition, but Pico's one of the most hyped prospects in MMA history recently. He's got nasty ground control. He's got really good boxing, Olympic level entries on his takedowns, but Murphy does have that jab and the footwork that could kind of neutralize the pressure the same way that he did with Josh Emmett. And then he can also control the fight in multiple aspects. I want to go by Pico by decision, but I think I'm going to go with Lerone Murphy by decision. He finds a way to win fights by decision. As you can see right here, his last 5 fights, all of them decision wins. He's more active. He's fought higher level competition. Pico's 28, so he's got time. Lerone Murphy's 34. This is a tough one. This is a tough one, and it's on short notice. Lerone Murphy wasn't ready for a fight. Aaron Pico was. This is tough. I want to pick Aaron Pico, but I know I should pick Lerone Murphy. I'm going to go out on a limb. Aaron Pico KO. I'm going to go out on a limb. He's got nasty boxing and I'm going to go with Aaron Pico. There's got to be one Bellator guy to break through, right? Or am I just not learning my lesson? Am I not learning my lesson that these Bellator guys just don't have the same talent? 28 years old, 34 years old. No, Pico round 2 KO. I know, yeah, Lerone Murphy got hit by a car and shot in the face and still lived. So he's got like the most legendary chin of all time. I got to take a risk. I got to take a risk. I know he's the slight favorite, but I feel like it's still a risky pick. I'm going with Aaron Pico by KO. We move on to the main event. We have Dricus du Plessis against Khamzat Chimaev. Now, Dricus du Plessis, undefeated in the UFC. Khamzat undefeated in general, 23-2 du Plessis against, I believe, 14-0 Khamzat, very inactive. He's had 5 fights in 4 years, where DDPs have 5 fights in 2.5 years. They're basically the same age. They're both 31. Same height, same reach. DDP by falling piano. There's my prediction, is DDP by falling piano. Now I'm joking, of course, but we have Dricus' style, which is awkward but brutally effective. I mean, he beat Strickland and then Adesanya and then Strickland again. He beat Rob Whittaker. He beat Derek Brunson. He beat Brad Tavares. He beat Darren Till. Du Plessis has a super impressive UFC resume. Chimaev, undefeated, dangerous grappler, very dangerous in the beginning of fights. But he has struggles with the weight cut before. He's got the political controversy. Him winning could be an issue depending on who the UFC or who the US president is, because Chimaev was really only able to get into the US for this fight because Trump is in office. When Biden was in office, it was the whole war criminal, he can't get into the US, but all of a sudden Trump gets in and he can get in. So this is actually, I don't know, I made a video about it a couple weeks ago. I just worry about Chimaev being able to get into the US as a champion and why that's bad for the sport. But anyways, the stakes is Du Plessis, who is unexpected to become champ, in my opinion, who's now making a case for the best middleweight of all time if he wins this fight, defending his belt against the most hyped prospect in UFC history. If we're being honest, Khamzat is the most hyped UFC prospect of all time. Now, Du Plessis, wild, unpredictable, got a crazy gas tank at this point. He's very, very tough. His awkward rhythm and his strength can kind of disrupt striking timing, takedown timing. You saw him decisively beat Strickland in their second fight, and in a close fight, but still not one-sided, but very clear winner in the Adesanya fight. He won by submission. Chimaev, he's got that kind of like blitz, bat out of hell pressure type of style, high-level grappling, insane ground and pound, very good submissions. Interesting thing about this fight is that if you were to look at their two styles and you'd say, oh, Du Plessis needs to disrupt the takedown timing, keep it standing, try to tire out Chimaev. For Chimaev, you'd say he's got to get a takedown and a finish in the first round, or he's going to gas out. Don't let it become a cardio war. While those still do hold true, either guy could win this fight either way. Khamzat could gas out and Dricus could get a late round sub or TKO on the ground. Khamzat could land a big right hand in the first round that puts Du Plessis to sleep. I mean, he did put that John Phillips guy to sleep with his first punch. I'm not saying Dricus is that same level of talent, but he's been knocked out before, and he got knocked out at welterweight. So it's possible. And it's not like he's been fighting guys with the biggest punching power. If you go back through his fights, Derek Brunson, not a whole lot of punching power. Darren Till was dangerous. Darren Till was crafty, but Brad Tavares, not a bunch of punching power. Derek Brunson, not much punching power. Sean Strickland, no punching power. Adesanya, some, but not really a whole lot of punching power. So what I think about this fight is that it's not a matter of if Khamzat wins or DDP wins. It's a matter of, does Khamzat Chimaev get a finish in the first 6 or 7 minutes of the fight or not? Because if he does, obviously the fight's over. If he gets a finish in the first 5 to 7 minutes, obviously the fight's over. If he doesn't get a finish there, I think there's almost 0% chance that he wins this fight. If DDP can survive the first round and a half, Khamzat's going to gas, and he's going to gas fast. And Khamzat is going to get TKO'd or submitted by DDP in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round. So I have picked against DDP so many times. I picked him in the Strickland fight. I picked him in the Adesanya fight. But before that, I was like, yeah, this guy's terrible. No way he becomes a champion. But now that I look at it, and I look at how inconsistent Khamzat is with his weight cuts, with his activity, when you consider that the Whittaker fight, Whittaker's jaw was already compromised before that, so you know he might not even have got that sub if it wasn't the case. I am going to go with DDP by round 4, ground and pound TKO. Khamzat's going to gas. It feels weird saying that because Chimaev has been built up as this unbeatable, undefeated force. I think DDP is the goofy style, gas tank, and toughness to win this fight. And then from then on, we have the winner of Kyle Bohalio versus Nassourdine Imavov. You have Rener de Ridder in the mix. You have Paulo Costa wants a shot back at the top. You know, he wants to fight an Adesanya, something like that. There's a lot there. Adesanya might get one more win and they want him to rematch DDP. There's a lot of fights for DDP. He's not going to go up to 205 anytime soon. But I am going to take DDP round 4 TKO, ground and pound. So there you have it. For the main card, I got DDP winning, Aaron Pico winning, Carlos Prates, Michael Venom Page, and Kai Asakura. We're going to see a lot of decisions on this card, I'm pretty sure. So there it is. Let me know your picks down below. Like, subscribe. I'm Wyatt, and this is Fight Society. Do you want more from Fight Society? Like and subscribe below this video and click the join button to become a channel member today to get access to behind the scenes vlogs and members only live streams.